Okay, let's talk about when you move, what can you bring and what you cannot bring. Now, in this case, there's a full list which is available on a lot of sites. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 of them so that way you can compare. But generally, the lists are accurate. These are movers, like professional one, for example, Allied, Team Allied, which is a very good one, will have a list of what you can and cannot bring in different countries. You really have to make sure that you check this list out before you actually move to another country, because sometimes it might be ridiculous, some things you don't even think about that might be illegal to bring in another country or cannot be imported at all. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples. I'm going to give you some countries and some scenarios so you can have a general idea, and then after that you can look at that list before you actually start packing your container or start thinking of relocating. Okay? Diesel cars. A lot of countries don't allow them. So if you have a diesel vehicle, you're going to have to sell it before you move. Used motorcycles. That's also another thing. If the motorcycle is brand new, you might be able to import it. Otherwise, you may not. Now, with that issue is, like if you, you also have to look at what constitutes a used motorcycle, okay? I lost a scooter that I had bought in Switzerland a few days before we left to move to Philippines, and I lost it in the Philippines because of the fact that, well, I lost it. Technically, I managed to import it, but I did it a year later, and the fees at the port were so high that it was higher than the scooter, and screw that. I only had 200 kilometers on it, which technically is not unusual for a new scooter, provided testing and driving around or whatever. I bought it brand new, but it didn't have 0 kilometers. The stupid people at the port didn't understand that concept. Anyways, in the end, I don't know, maybe the daughter of the president of the country is now driving it, who knows. So I lost it. A lot of Israeli-made products are illegal. Sounds stupid. Don't try to find Pepsi in Lebanon. It's illegal because Pepsi is owned by Jewish people and they will not allow it in the country. You have Coke, no problem, Sprite, no issues, but you're not going to buy Pepsi. You cannot bring those products inside the country, so if you have any, they could be seized. Not that you really care about Pepsi, but other things that are Israeli made could be a problem. Books when you get into Vietnam, also China, I'm not going to mention North Korea. They will read or they will check the book to see if it's not subversive material, if it is, or if the book is on basically a blacklist, the book will not be allowed to be imported and you lose it. Or you can pay for exporting it, but that's going to cost you a fortune. Alcohol. A lot of countries, especially Muslim one, will not allow you to bring in alcohol. So when you move in, don't bring your alcohol with you. Most countries around the world, and surprisingly enough, the United States, will not allow you to import your guns, even though there are zillions of them in the country. So basically, you won't be able to do that. So you have to get rid of your firearm, or at least not bring them. And that might also be a problem because if you're not allowed, if you're Canadian, for example, and you're not in the country, technically your guns are supposed to follow you. I cannot just leave my gun at a friend's house who doesn't have a permit for it, so I have to get rid of my guns if ever I move away. Luckily for me, I didn't own any, so that was easy enough. As a permanent traveler, there's a lot of things that you sort of realize that you cannot really have, and that was among that. Different kinds of scuba diving tanks, DIN versus yoke. Some are not allowed to be imported in the country, or even if you could import them in a country, you cannot fill them or you cannot do anything, so they're basically lost. A lot of electric items also that you have to check, 110 versus 220. Some may be even allowed in the country, some are not allowed at all. But even if you're allowed, sometimes it's difficult to be able to make them function versus 50 hertz versus 60 hertz. I have a lot of videos on that, on how to convert your appliances or how to actually get your appliances to work abroad. So that's the kind of things that you have to check into. And the obvious one, like I said, is mainly vehicles and things that you, out of your head, you might, like tobacco and something like that, you more than likely will figure it out very easily. Some are less obvious. So you have to check this out, because if you get there, you might not be able to. In our case, for example, my car, and that's the last example I'll give you, my car is a BMW X3, which is new. but it was a European spec. We bought it in Switzerland. I had no problem exporting it anywhere around the world so far, except when I arrived in the United States. Now, we imported under the diplomatic agreement, so they had no choice but to allow it in the country, but legally, technically, you're not supposed to be able to import European spec vehicle into the United States. They have to be converted into American spec, which is ridiculous. It's basically the same thing and it costs a fortune. So luckily in our case, we had no issues because of that. And there are probably other people that might have been able to do them in different ways, but you also have to be very careful of that kind of minute verification, miles versus kilometers and so forth. So check this out before you move into the US for your vehicles. And that's it. I hope that was useful. Take care.